Hello and welcome to the fourth and final video in this series, where we will explore a level 6 response to men seem to be more powerful than women, but the reality is very different. Now, this is a level 6 response, and it received a total of 28 out of 30. Now, if we look at the mark scheme in level 6, the key words are excellent and consistently detailed. So this candidate has shown consistently developed and consistently detailed understanding of the significance and influence of the context of where the text was written and received. They have made excellent and consistently detailed comparative analysis of a relationship between the texts. They have shown an excellent and consistently detailed understanding of the text in questions. Their argument is coherent and well structured, and they have written appropriately with critical concepts and terminology. And finally, their judgment is consistently informed by exploration of different interpretations. Now, what did the examiner say about this? So the examiner has said they do note that this is a succinct answer, and I think that is something that's very worth me drawing your attention to. This is 2 sides long. The level 4 and the level 5 response were much longer. They covered 4 and more pages. So it is worth noting, it's what you do, not how much of it you do, that receives the marks. So this is the shortest response, but by far 28 out of 30, which, again, the caveat, grade boundaries will move, but this is arguably an A-star response. Now, the examiner goes on to say it's a succinct answer which demonstrates substantial excellence in its focused and intensive approach to the text and to the task. So what the candidate has done is they focused very specifically on what the question is asking and used multiple aspects throughout the text to support and explore their ideas. The examiner says the candidate is notably impressive in the way which he concentrates both on the requirements of a question and on the demands of the dominant assessment objective, AO3 in context. Again, I will point this out as we go through it, but the candidate has got an excellent knowledge of AO3. The examiner goes on to say the material presented is consistently developed and consistently detailed, and the very opening sentence, which we'll read shortly, establishes the tone effectively with mention of patriarchal 19th century Europe. Comparative analysis of the 2 texts is sustained, excellent, and consistently detailed throughout. So, without further ado, let's see how the candidate did this. Both Henry Ibsen's A Doll's House and Christina Rossetti's poems were written in the context of patriarchal 19th century Europe. Thus, both writers seem to explore the different expectations applied to men and women, yet both seem to carry an inherent belief in gender equality. So in their introduction, they've referenced both texts, they've referenced the context of the text, and they've explored how the ideas are portrayed in a similar fashion in both texts, hitting the 2 dominant objectives, AO3 and AO4, in the first sentence. AO3 has continued to be developed as we read on. In 1879, the first wave of feminism came in Norway, and it was in this climate Ibsen penned A Doll's House. Michael Billington described it as a play about domestic revolution, which is an argument supported by how Torvald oppresses Nora, belittling and dehumanising her with cruel pet names such as Squirrel and Squanderbird. So here, in the next couple of sentences, we have an expansion of the AO3 that they've mentioned in their introduction. We have a relevant critical theory, and they've linked that critical theory in a detailed fashion to their AO1 point. This is particularly impressive. They look at an alternative interpretation. Alternatively, Torvald can be seen as a victim of his expected dominant gender role within the institution of marriage, as he is left broken when Nora leaves at the end of the play. So that is sophisticated. They are looking at this concept of domestic revolution that they've mentioned in the AO5, and they're exploring the different ways it can be portrayed within the text. Either interpretation seems to exhibit Ibsen criticising marriage. And here we have a good link to Rossetti. Something Rossetti seems to do in her poem Maud Clare. She cleverly subverts the ballad form to criticise marriage and not praise it, as would be expected, by showing how Sir Thomas hasn't always been faithful and thus implying marriage is imperfect, something she seemed to believe strongly herself, having been engaged 3 times but never married. Now, what we have in this section is we have the comparison, we have an excellent link of textual detail to the focus of the question, men seem to be more powerful than women, and we have it integrated succinctly with AO3 from Rossetti's life. It continues. The poem also demonstrates Rossetti defying the idea that men are more powerful, as Sir Thomas appears weak and afraid when stuttering in reply to the strong character of Maud Clare, whose power is emphasised by her titular role. So, what the candidate has done, excellent use of AO1, and they're using it to support their AO3, their comparison, and their critical points. They continue on to another point. In this way, feminist critics such as Sandra Gilbert and Susan Gilbar view Rossetti as a singer of renunciation against the belief of her time that men and women should have separate spheres. Beautifully integrated short quotes from critical theorists. This argument is supported by the many strong women who feature in her work, such as Maud Clare and the Speaker of No Thank You John. The AO5 is clearly linked to their knowledge of the text. Thus it seems clear Rossetti wanted to promote women as equal or perhaps even more powerful than men. However, an alternative argument is that she was compliant with the patriarchal society of Victorian England, as she made it clear she wasn't a feminist, believing women shouldn't go to university. Again, a good piece of AO3 integrated with an alternative interpretation. Ibsen also refused to call himself a feminist, and as Joan Templeton describes, he did not stoop to issues. However, in spite of this, he clearly shares a belief in the strength and independence of women by giving Nora the ability to go against her husband, seek freedom, and leave the household at the end of the play. Again, I'm sounding repetitive, but I am being repetitive because what they've done is good. You'll notice my annotations at the side, I've coupled a lot together, and that is the strength of what this candidate has done. Their AO5, their AO3 and their AO1 are all blended, and most importantly they're bringing it back to the major focus of the question. This candidate never loses sight of that concept of gender and men and women. They continue onwards. Although Nora appears stronger than Torvald in the closing stages of A Doll's House, Ibsen implies a clear belief that men and women are equal. This belief was demonstrated in his commitment to an equal relationship with his wife, Susanna Forrison, something he made public and seemed to mirror in A Doll's House through the relationship of Krogstad and Mrs. Linda at the end of the play, who are honest and open with each other. Again, you'll notice my arrows at the side, AO1, AO3 linking back to AO1. It's all beautifully blended, and they have a good knowledge of Ibsen's life as well. He references the subplot of Krogstad and Mrs. Linda, which we will have discussed, contrary to expectations of the time. They get their happy ending, as this candidate says, because of their honesty and openness. So we have actually two contrasting styles of relationship within Ibsen, which this candidate has drawn upon for their answer. Thus, he may imply that equality is a necessity in true love, which seems to be a belief Christina Rossetti also carried. Although her poetry about love, such as A Birthday, is largely very personal and internally buried, she exhibited a belief in selfless love in her poetry. For example, within The Round Tower at Yancey, where the lovers wish to die together. That seems to put true love and gender equality hand in hand. Again, an excellent comparative point, blended with Rossetti's textual detail. We then have a final piece of context for Rossetti. Although Christina Rossetti perhaps shared a lack of understanding about men, supposedly never recovering from the loss of her father at a young age. She, through her work, seems to believe in gender equality. Ibsen seems to explore male and female power dynamics more explicitly, a good comparative point in their conclusion, with power shifting from Torvald to Nora, but a belief that neither gender is more powerful also shines through, something clearly evidenced by his personal life. Blending of the comparison and the context. Thus it could be said, Ibsen didn't mark boundaries between men and women, and as Joan Templeton claimed, was in fact a poet of the truth of the human soul, which is a title that can apply in the theme of equality to be applied to Christina Rossetti as well. And they finish up masterfully blending the overall themes of both writers' works with a final critical interpretation. So yes, in all, a short answer, but one that remains laser focused on the question, references the text succinctly throughout, and basically just gets the job done. Well, that is the end of these videos, and I hope they are helpful in your revision.